Hey, what's up, you guys? You're watching APS Amplifier. Paul here. So today I wanted to talk about a kind of specific subset of Yu-Gi-Oh cards that have a bit of a complicated relationship within the Yu-Gi-Oh community. So I'll name a few of them and you can see if you can tell what they've got in common. Droll and Lockbird, Dimension Shifter, Dimensional Barrier, and more recently, Artifact Lancia. So, what do these cards have in common? They're all really potentially powerful turn-ending type cards and effects. So resolving a Droll and Lockbird in a deck that searches a lot, which is many decks in modern Yu-Gi-Oh, means that they kind of just have to end their turn. Same goes for Dimension Shifter and really all the others on the list to varying degrees. The reason I'm talking about this more now is because I've been looking at a lot of different people's ban list predictions videos, just because, it's kind of approaching that time right now. And I thought that it'd be sort of interesting. The thing that I noticed was that a lot of people do seem to be talking about, hey guys, maybe we need to get rid of Artifact Lancia, maybe we need to get rid of Dimension Shifter. Well, that's not a new thing. People have always hated that card. But yeah, these cards have been popping up a lot more. And it was sort of interesting to me to see that even Droll and Lockbird sort of seems like it's on the chopping block in a lot of people's opinion. So that was kind of new. And also Abyss Dweller and Dimensional Barrier. Like I said, people have always had mixed thoughts on those cards. But I wanted to talk about them today, why people seem to be so mixed on these cards. Because there's a little bit of an irony to it. Technically speaking, all of these cards are really great at stopping some of the best decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Not just right now, but historically that's sort of been the case. Right now it's like Ryzeal and Malice, and obviously the Fiendsmith engine is very prominent and things like that. But if you kind of look at any recent year of modern Yu-Gi-Oh!, these were oftentimes the cards that would shut these decks down. So there's some irony then in the fact that people sort of almost want to protect these decks' ability to play. Like Artifact Lancia is a way to completely shut down a Malice deck. And also, using Dimensional Barrier on a Ryzeal deck, like pure Ryzeal, means that they oftentimes just kind of can't play for that turn. So since historically in most games, people don't like the best decks or the best characters or the best heroes, right? This is just most competitive kind of multiplayer games and stuff. People don't like the best thing and want it nerfed or want it gone or want to find counterplay to it. It's almost like funny that the cards that beat these decks are the cards that people also want gone. Now, of course, it goes a little bit deeper than that because here's the problem. These decks can utilize these cards just as well, if not more effectively, than a lower tier deck could. So sure, using an Artifact Lancia can shut down Malice, but also Malice gets to run Dimension Shifter in the main deck and just play it for free, and it even can actually benefit them in most cases. This was sort of the same situation that we saw with decks like Kashtira in the past, and nobody really likes it. Nobody really likes when an already powerful and sort of polarizing card can be even better utilized by a deck that's already powerful and polarizing. Same goes for Ryzeal. They can make all of their plays if they go first and then still set a dimensional barrier that they sided in against you and flip it against an opposing Ryzeal player or an opposing tier 2 or tier 3 deck that has to Xyz summon, like let's say somebody just running a Photon Galaxy deck or something like that, and just completely shut them down. So I think that's kind of the first obvious really big reason is the best decks can oftentimes utilize the best cards and abuse them harder than the lower tier decks can. That's no secret, that's nothing prophetic, I'm just saying like that's the case. But another thing too is the fact that so much of modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Really does come down to the first turn. Like there's so much pressure that's just condensed down into whether or not you get to effectively play on your first turn or not, that it was no surprise that these cards would eventually find their way kind of on people's hot list, right? If you think about a card like, say, Dimensional Barrier, if you were to use this card in maybe 2010, like let's just inject Dimensional Barrier into Edison format, and you get to call Synchro on a deck, that could be really powerful, and obviously it's very turn-ending against decks that have to Synchro summon a lot, like let's say like a Blackwing deck or something. But the truth is, they'd probably just maybe like set an Icarus attack and like pass their turn and be okay because there's no real fear that they're necessarily going to get OTK'd the very next turn. The same goes for actually even something like Dimension Shifter. Even against a maybe more graveyard reliant deck, if you look to the past, like 2010 and back, pitching a Shifter on somebody, they'll just T-set and pass, it'll be fine. You won't even probably get to use Droll because if they search once, that might be all the searching that they're doing that turn. However, these cards have all aged really, I don't know if poorly is the word, maybe they aged like a fine wine, maybe they aged too well, I don't know. But because more and more of Yu-Gi-Oh! Happens in the first turn and more of your result, the result of a duel is contingent on whether or not you get to set up your board and play, these cards have effectively like aged just badly into it, or whatever word we're choosing to use for that. I think it's kind of interesting because I guess maybe what people really want to say with these sort of floodgatey turn ending style cards is that you should have to play and break boards on your own merits. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you're playing a insert any combo deck that's like a tier 2 or tier 3 type strategy. We're not even saying like, it's got to be Ryzeal or Malice or whatever, just like any combo deck, right? Just whatever one comes into your head. And you go first and I pitch Dimension Shifter and you have to end your turn, and then I take my turn and I play and I beat you and you're really salty and bitter. I think that the argument would be that, okay, you should be able to play unimpeded and then the onus should be on me to break the board that you make. That can sometimes be doable. I mean, there are board breaker cards, which also have their own set of kind of controversy around them. Some people, don't like Dark Ruler No More, don't like, stuff like Super Poly where it can't be chained to. But the argument seems to be that, yeah, like you should have to kind of break boards yourself. You shouldn't have extremely polarizing hand traps that just stop them and like floodgate your opponent out. There's also kind of just the whole, like, and this gets more into like Abyss Dweller and Dimensional Barrier, where the top deck should not maybe be able to do its unimpeded board, do its unimpeded thing, its long combo in the first turn, and then set a card that completely shuts out the other person's turn. That's where the Abyss Dweller comes in. That's also where like the Maxi kind of argument that happens in Master Duel a lot pops up, where it's like, okay, they got to do everything and then they Maxi'd you on the draw phase. You can see Konami sort of correcting for some of this. The Molcharmi cards, I think, are like a really good sort of design answer to Maxi's flaws, right? Like if I make a crazy board, then my Molcharmi cards are suddenly useless against you. And I think that that's like a pretty good balancing aspect. People don't seem to really hate the Molcharmi cards, at least not in the same way that they hate Maxi. And also you have to run a lot of them if you want to really cover all of your bases, because one alone won't gain you nearly as much advantage as Maxi would for free. So I think that it's certainly a good start. But I wanted to get more people's opinions on these cards because I still sometimes see them as like load-bearing cards. Like I can totally get why somebody would want Dimension Shifter gone, but I think like Drone Lockbird's a bit of a different story because, I don't know, I mean like Maxi, broken, sure. Dimension Shifter, broken, sure. Drone Lockbird, I'm not so sure. Like it's sort of, it's a load-bearing card in the sense that like, if a format gets really crazy and there's a lot of searching, I think of maybe like Drytron in recent memory was like a really good example of a card where like Drone Lockbird was a really good answer to them. They could still play through it, and I think most decks can still do something underneath Droll, whereas like Shifter, that's a little bit less likely. I think like Droll is fine. Also, something new too that I guess I should probably mention is like some of these cards are a lot more accessible, I feel like, than they were years ago. Not all of them, but like certain decks can, for instance, or really any deck, thanks to Triple Tactics Thrust, can like search and set Dimensional Barrier, right, before they even end their turn. You can also do that sometimes with cards like, Nightmare Griffin. But yeah, like the fact that Dimensional Barrier is no longer even just a card you have to sort of get lucky and draw, it's like, no, you can get to this card and like set it for free. Gets a little rude. There's also kind of the whole conversation around like the Triple Tactics cards. I've seen people who want those banned because Thrust can search D-Barrier, and like that alone can sort of invalidate a lot of decks. It's a little gross. Abyss Dweller has technically always been pretty accessible by like a rank 4 deck, but I think nowadays when the very best deck in the game can make it easily and stuff, it's like, does that really feel good? And the last thing is like, do you want these cards hit or do you want the best decks hit? Or maybe you just want both hit. Like what would a Yu-Gi-Oh look like without any of these cards? It seems like it'd probably be a utopia because everybody gets to play kind of a lot less impeded. There's no cards that can stop my turn because I should be able to play and play and play and play, and nobody should be able to say no to it. But I don't know, sometimes it's just like a mix. Anyway, that's the video. I wanted to hear people's opinions on this. How does everybody feel about these sort of turn stopper cards that can effectively beat meta decks, but also be abused even harder by said like top meta decks? I'd love to hear your opinions down below in the comments. And yeah, we'll be talking, we'll be chatting, I'll try to respond. Anyways, gonna see you guys in the next one. Fast turn.